Prop Z for most of the city of San Diego that's located within the San Diego Unified School District would add $60 per $100,000 of property that you own. So if you have a $400,000 house, that would add $240 for your property tax bill. One of the interesting aspects of it is it's mostly for things that have gone wrong as opposed to things that they want to build. And we'll get more into that. And so the question is, should we pass it or not? Here with me today are Scott Barnett, a member of the school board, who formerly had Lani Lutar's job, the head of the Taxpayers Association. Scott's been on the school board for 2 years.
Almost, but it seems longer.
Okay, almost 2 years. and is a Republican, but had an independent streak, including supporting this tax increase, which the Republican Party, I guess, opposed, correct? And Lani Lutar, the CEO of the Taxpayers Association. Lani's had an incredible effect on the Taxpayers Association, I think made them very powerful in town. And they endorsed Prop S in 2008, but have opposed Prop Z in 2012. So the question is, should we pass Prop Z or not? I'm going to give you both a couple minutes. We're not timing this. We're not going to cut everybody off. We're not going to be too crazy about it. But we are going to try to keep things fair. So why don't you start with some intros, what your thoughts are. Why do you oppose it, Lani? And why are you pushing it, Scott?
Thanks, Scott. Is this on? Yeah, okay. So the Taxpayers Association reviews school bonds every election cycle. And as Scott mentioned, we did support Proposition S, which was a $2.1 billion bond that was approved by the voters in 2008. So why are we opposed to Proposition Z? Well, the interesting thing is that out of the $2.1 billion bond that was approved just 4 short years ago, there is still $1.7 billion remaining. So that's the simple reason, one of the key reasons we are opposed to this measure. We believe the school district needs to fulfill its promises that it made to voters 4 years ago about the critical repairs they said they needed to make, about all the things they said they were going to do. They have not done. And in fact, if you look at the promises that were made 4 years ago, what have they spent the money on? Technology, specifically iPads. They have bought iPads using 40-year financing. So kids that are in the school system today are going to be paying this off in 40 years. And the question we really have to ask ourselves is, do we want to approve yet another $2.8 billion bond when you have a school district, a school board that doesn't fulfill its promises and can't be trusted? We also know that the school board is not dealing with the 100K Club pensioners at the district. Now, this isn't for the teachers. These are for the administrators, management, and principals that are getting pensions in excess of $100,000.
It's a thing. It's what we do.
The elected officials at San Diego Unified have done nothing to address the growing 100K Club among management administrators at San Diego Unified. And to further complicate matters, this is a tax increase on top of all the other measures that we're going to be faced with this November. You have a business tax. You have 2 income taxes. You have a sales tax increase. And then there's a whole bunch of federal taxes that are scheduled to go up if further action isn't taken before the end of the year. And that is going to amount to thousands of dollars impacting every single resident, especially seniors on fixed income. So that sort of sums up the key reasons why we're opposed at the Taxpayers Association to Prop Z. But understand that this is not, we don't oppose all school bonds. In fact, we're supporting 6 other school bonds in the region. But San Diego Unified has a horrible track record for financial management and has not been able to prove that we should trust them with another $2.8 billion when they haven't even spent the money from the first bond just 4 years ago.
Let me jump in. Let me jump in real quick. The $1.7 billion that you say remains, what is that, just a big pile of money somewhere? What's going on? What is this $1.7 billion?
Well, this is monies that voters have approved that in order for the school board, they would have to issue additional bonds to access this capital. And Scott, I'm sure, will talk a little bit more about that.
Scott, why don't you spend that money? You can't spend it?
Well, we are spending it, and I guess first I'd like to give a little overview of Prop Z and then respond to some of the issues that Lani raised, if I may. Prop Z will pay to move the airport away from Point Loma.
False. Okay.
Fact check that.
Yeah. False.
Is this about 15 years ago or so, the district started an analysis, a huge community-based analysis of its needs, looking at the fact that many of our buildings are 50 or 60 years old. Point Loma High, right up the hill, was created 125 years ago, although there's no buildings that old there. And there was a development of a $7 billion need list. We're the second largest school district in the state. We have over 200 educational facilities and 130,000 students. Well, the Taxpayers Association was part of that whole process in developing the needs list of some $7 billion. Prop MM that passed in 1998 was about $1.51 billion. Prop S, which passed in 2008, is $2.1 billion, and Prop Z will be $2.8 billion. And it basically, each of these bonds builds upon the other and will continue to build the needs of the schools, not only the fact that we have major repairs and renovations and so forth, and it will continue the I-21 program, which is nationally recognized. It will also, what it will do is it will invest in capital projects that will reduce the impact on the general fund. The candidates who were here before was talking about where are we going to have the money, where's the general fund money. We spend $18 million a year on utility costs in this district by investing in new solar and new energy cell technology, by putting gray water systems in our schools to recycle water instead of buying for lawns and so forth. That will reduce our energy costs. That's one of the things this bond will do. It's also what it's going to do is we had about $500 million of major and deferred maintenance in our schools at the start of Prop S. Well, that cost every year goes up about $50 million a year because every year the buildings get older. And this has been going back for decades. So what Prop Z is going to do for the first time in history, it actually is going to eliminate all the deferred maintenance down to about 4% from about 18% now. And this is an issue I've been working on since I was at the Taxpayers Association. How do we actually have a real plan to eliminate deferred maintenance? The city of San Diego, by the way, doesn't have a plan to do that. They're not doing it. We have a plan, and this will actually do that, and that's been a big issue of the Taxpayers Association. Now, I'd like to address some of the issues that Lani raised. It's interesting to say they've, first of all, there are some comments that were just incorrect. The district to date on Prop S has spent about $380 million on Prop S. She said the majority of that was all on iPads. Just not true. $250 million of that was spent on buildings, utilities, infrastructure, including old portables and so forth. The Taxpayers Association has sat on the oversight committee for Prop MM, for Prop S. If she would simply had asked her member of the oversight committee, I'm sure, and read the reports that are presented monthly, she could have seen that, in fact, that is incorrect. Now, of the technology, $125 million has been spent on technology, of which $80 million of that was Wi-Fi, infrastructure, conduit, utilities, classroom improvements, and so forth. And about, as of now, about $43 million in netbooks, iPads, and so forth. 50,000 of the kids in this district are in poverty. My kids have these at home. Under the California Constitution, Prop 39, which the Taxpayers Association supported, you are allowed to pay for technology. And the district is doing that. You're saying they didn't support it? It was in 2000. The Taxpayers Association supported Prop S, which included technology. They've sat on the oversight committee. Let's talk about the fact that she said there's not supporting this bonds because we're spending this money in technology. Well, some of the other bonds are supporting, like San Diego, Prop AA, specifically in it calls for spending money on district-wide technology, $17 million. District-wide furniture and equipment, $11 million. Also, by the way, in Prop A in San Diego, they specifically say they're going to use capital appreciation bonds as part of the financing. So you maybe you need to do a fact check, you need to do a hypocrisy check.
The capital appreciation bonds, by the way, those are the ones that Poway Unified School District used. They borrowed $105 million, and over time are going to have to pay nearly $1 billion back for that borrowing. The Taxpayers Association have offered some guidance on that. Do you want to respond to his points?
Yeah, I would. Okay, so first, there are no real safeguards in Proposition Z. That is a fact. Yes, there's a committee that's going to be appointed by school board members, and we might have one seat on it. That means nothing. There are no real safeguards in Proposition Z for the taxpayers. And this is, in fact, why with Proposition S, what did we see? The school board, the San Diego Unified School Board, used those high interest, high financing, high cost financing mechanisms, the same ones that Poway adopted, are being used by San Diego Unified. And so at the end of the day, the school board's own financial advisors have acknowledged that Proposition S, which was a $1.2 billion bond approved by the voters, is $2.1 billion approved by the voters, is likely going to cost $10 to $14 billion because of these actions by the school board to date. 10 to 14 billion.
That's if cabs were used for all future
No,
bonds.
that's not correct. That's not correct. So now they're asking for another $2.8 billion. They told you 4 years ago that they're going to address critical repairs, and we do pay attention to what the reports that come out, and it's based on the most recent report that was presented to the committee that said that zero has been spent on major repair and replacement projects. Zero. So Scott can throw out all these numbers about where they spent their money. He can say, oh, we're not going to do the same thing that we did back then. We've learned. But the fact is, they've done it before. There's no reason they're not going to do it again. The fact is, there's been zero spent on major repair and replacement projects. And
First of all,
and in terms of all of the
true.
different
It's
measures that we
absolutely
have
untrue.
endorsed,
You're uninformed.
none of the school
You're
bonds that we're
uninformed.
supporting are going to be paying for iPads. We have a policy that the school boards have to adopt.
Have you read their bond measures?
We have
you read
read
them?
and
Specifically says
they have
computer equipment.
adopted policies that
Finish
have
up.
stated that they're not buying iPads. So you can distract and say, oh, well, they're doing this elsewhere. No, that is simply not true. And what we know is that this school board, the San Diego Unified School Board, cannot be trusted with another $2.8 billion bond measure, which by the time you add interest could very well end up being 7 to 10 times the total cost. So you're talking about over $10 billion easily because
Well, first of all,
interest
all
costs.
school
Let's let him
bonds
respond.
have significant interest. Prop S did. You know that, Lani. You know that interest pays off in the future, and the bonds end up being more expensive than the actual principal. That's financing 101. It's funny how Lani says she doesn't trust the school board. I'm saying very clearly what we're spending money on. And I will go through every single project that we've spent on Prop S, and as I said specifically, $253 million were billed on buildings, utilities, and infrastructure
let me
projects.
jump in
Wait,
real
let me
quick.
go on the CAB issue first, capital appreciation bonds. This is a perfect example, this is a perfect example of political ambulance chasing by the Taxpayers Association. When they never once raised a concern about capital appreciation bonds until the Voice of San Diego did the story. I wish, Lani, you would come down to the school board meeting where I voted against the capital appreciation bonds, the most recent one in the district. You were nowhere to be seen until you got caught with your pants down because Poway used a very expensive capital appreciation bond. The fact is, Prop Z is going to generate new revenue and there won't be capital appreciation bonds. In San Diego, it specifically says in the taxpayers report they're going to use capital appreciation bonds and they're supporting it. So basically, Ms. Lutar and the Taxpayers Association has a political grudge against the school district. It's simple because Ms. Lutar opposed Prop S. She was overruled by her board, and to this day, she's had a grudge against
All
it.
right, we'll get into that in a second.